Good afternoon. Today is February 18th, 2026, and it is 12:53 p.m. Central Time. My name is Rinaldo J. Aguiar Marcano, and this is I think it's the third segment of demo D111, so 111. So today I have actually quite a few things because last night I was going out um, to check an area, and I had a little bit of a mishap. So what happened was I was taking an exit, and I thought, I mean, it was dark, the lighting was bad, and I thought it was a kind of an exit that I thought it had two lanes, and I took the left lane, but it wasn't a real lane. It was a curve that was not painted. Um, So I hit the curve with one of the tires, and I got a flat. So I had to basically come back. Um, so I have a few things that I want um, to mention, right? So, but there's one in particular that is a little bit of a serious topic. I mean, all the topics are serious, but like this is particularly concerning, right? And so I'm going to start with that. Um, and I want to try to simplify it. I mean, the way I describe it, because it's a complicated sequence, right? And it requires having context of at least the last 5 or 6 demos. So I don't want to confuse people, and I want to make this consumable, right, for everybody. But at the same time, I'll try to give you, enough details so you can, you know, uh, capture the essence of the sequence, right? So it's a very serious thing because it is, I think, it's proof that there is at least one spy inside of the Supreme Court of the U.S. I'm talking about the federal Supreme Court. This is a very serious allegation, right? And of course, right, I suspected it, but at this point, I think I even have proof. And this was a sequence that I designed, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this in a second. So he turns to the other side. So this is the thing, right? Let me see where I start. Okay, so let me give you the quick background, right? So I submitted an application, I think on February the 6th, which was, I think, a Friday, and it arrived there on the next Monday. It was rejected. There was a petition for writ of mandamus. Okay, it was rejected because it was not in booklet format, because it was a petition for writ of mandamus, and that those petitions have a specific set of rules that apply, and the formatting is different. So it got rejected. And there's a few pieces of information that I haven't disclosed, right? I'm gonna disclose them in this segment. One is that when that petition got rejected, I knew, because the informant told me beforehand, what was the reason for rejection. So I already knew, but I didn't say anything, right? And because I did not find the package in time, because he didn't tell me about the rules with the package, right? So I couldn't really turn this into a proof. Like I couldn't demonstrate that I knew, right? So what I did is that I didn't really fix the problem, right? I didn't submit the application. I mean the petition for writ of mandamus again immediately, right? But then what I did is that at the same time, while I was waiting for the rejection that wasn't behind next to the sprinkler, but I didn't know it was there, right? But during that time, I prepared an application for an emergency stay. And this is a different instrument that is governed by a different set of rules. And because of that, it doesn't, have the strict requirements of the booklet format. So basically that would bypass the reason for rejection, right, of the petition for writ of mandamus. So that's why I sent that application, and I sent it, right. So, but this is the explosive part. The explosive part is that after I sent it, the informant, in one of the times I went out, I'll check in which one of my runs this was, but in one of the times I went out, the informant sent me a message telling me that it was going to be rejected again, this time the application, right? Which is not governed by this set of strict formatting rules. But he warned me that it was going to be rejected as well for a different reason. And he told me the reason. The reason was going to be that they were going to tell me exactly the same thing that the fifth court, so the appellate court of the Fifth Circuit told me when I applied for a stay there. They told me, the Fifth Circuit, right, the courts of appeals, they told me you have to seek recourse on the lower courts, which is absurd because I'm suing the judge in the cause, and the judge is refusing to recuse himself, and not only that, he is rolling on motions that name him as a defendant, right? But that's what the Court of Appeal did, right? It's an abomination from a legal point of view to ask somebody to seek redress before a judge that is a defendant. It's absurd, right? But that's what they did. So the informant told me that the reason for rejection from the clerk was going to be that I had to seek recourse on the lower federal courts, in this case, the Court of Appeal. So they were going to tell me, you have to appeal this. But again, I think it's, when I heard this, I guess I've seen this play before, right? So this is a case of judicial usurpation. Like, this is something that has to be said by a judge, not by a clerk. The clerk doesn't have a saying on whether I have to seek recourse or not on a lower court. But that's what the informant told me that they were going to do, okay? So, but when he told me that, instead of getting discouraged, I could have gotten discouraged, but, I thought that more like an opportunity for me. Because I knew in advance what was going to happen, right? So what I did is to design a situation that could be constructed as a proof that, there is a leak, at least a leak, right? I'm not saying that, I'm not accusing anybody in the staff of the Supreme Court of maliciously, rejecting the filing, but at the very least, there is a spy. Like at the very least, there is a spy of Diosdado Cabello inside of the Supreme Court, and I'm going to tell you why. So I knew beforehand that the application was going to be rejected, right? And I knew beforehand why. They were going to tell me, and this is what the informant told me, right? And remember, this is an informant that, according to him, I never met him in person, I don't know his real name, but according to him, and according to, the multiple things that he had told me, which had turned to be true in the past, he is a person that works in the Army intelligence in Venezuela and is close to Diosdado Cabello, organizationally. So this person tells me that my application in the Supreme Court, in the Federal Supreme Court of the United States, is going to be rejected before it gets rejected. And not only that, he tells me the reason. He tells me what is the reason is going to be, right? So what I did is that, and in the first part of this demo, one-on-one, I said, I'm going to FedEx to file again the petition for writ of mandamus that got rejected. In that part, I have to tell you, I lied. That's not what I did, right? I went to FedEx, but I did not refile the petition of writ of mandamus, right? Of course, and this is the design of this sequence. Like, this is the part that I designed. I did this to construct verifiable proof, to trap them, to catch them, right? Red-handed, basically. So I said that in the demo, right? So they're thinking that I'm going to refile the petition for writ of mandamus, right? So they, of course, send me the package, right? The package with the rejection for the application for emergency stay, right? The emergency application for a stay of the lower courts. They sent me the package, right? But what I was really filing yesterday, 17th in the morning, I delivered it to FedEx. I gave it to FedEx, to the FedEx employee at the airport at 9:14 a.m., right? What really was in that package was an amended application for amended emergency application for a stay. So the same application that got rejected, but with the error, with the supposed error. It's not really an error because that the clerk shouldn't be making calls on jurisdiction. But, the supposed error, right, of jurisdiction, addressed, fixed, right? So when I delivered that to FedEx at 9:14 a.m., I had already fixed the day before. And imagine, I had to fix this on a legal document going to the Supreme Court. This is not a trivial task. This is not something that you can do in 2 minutes, right? I spent the whole day, the previous day, fixing this before even getting the rejection letter. And this is the proof. How could I have known, that the rejection letter was going to say this and that this was going to be the rejection reason, and not only fix it, but generate a completely new filing for the Supreme Court of the United States, which arguably has the highest possible legal filing standards in the country, before even getting the rejection from the clerk, right? How could I have developed that foreknowledge? This proves that I got this information from the informant. And it also proves other things. Well, let's talk about those later. But, sorry. They're signaling here with the police and, like the whole, the same thing they always do. This is Harris County Police, working on a traffic accident in Katy. I don't know, jurisdiction is really messy these days. But anyhow, so how could I have developed that foreknowledge, right? But also I want to tell you, right? Besides, it's not like I fixed the problem, right? Like, I did fix it, but it's not like, don't think that this is a one-line fix, right? I went way beyond this, right? Way beyond a one-line fix. And I did this on purpose to, demonstrate to everybody that this was an intentional action I took, and I put a lot of energy into this, right? So this is what I did. So the reason for rejection was going to be, and in fact, that was, and I got the letter yesterday, that I had to seek recourse on the lower courts, right? So meaning on the Court of Appeals of the Fifth Circuit. But of course, the problem is the same problem that I had when the Fifth Court of Appeals told me that, right? The clerk of the Fifth Court of Appeals is a named defendant in this very action. And not only that, that clerk has obstructed justice in at least 3 different cases on that very same court. So how can I seek recourse there? There's nothing for me to do in that court, right? The doors of that court are shut to me. Like, I cannot even file a document in that court because the clerk alters the meaning of the document. Like, they change the title, they, file the wrong thing. But let's not get into the details, right? But anyhow, so what I did is that, I'm describing to you the fix that I implemented, right? On that version of the application that I sent via FedEx at 9 a.m. yesterday, on the February the 17th. So what I did is that I made this a central issue in the application, right? And this is a little bit more of a detail, right? But in these applications and these instruments that you file with the Supreme Court, it is a common practice to present what they call questions to the justices. So the first thing you have to do is ask 1, 2, or 3 maximum fundamental questions. Like, they have to be, high-level questions about legal frameworks. Like you cannot ask about, should I have the child? Right? This has to be like high-level questions, right? So what I did, I turned the rejection reason of the clerk, which again, it's improper because the clerk shouldn't be ruling on, jurisdiction. But, I made that issue a central issue in one of the 2 questions that I present in this application to Justice Alito, right? So the second question, and this is on the first page of this application, the second question is, should this court have jurisdiction when all the lower courts are engaged in, criminal activities to obstruct justice to protect a RICO enterprise? That's basically what I said, right? I don't recall the exact wording that I used, but more or less that's what I said. So I'm addressing. So put this in perspective, right? I'm addressing the central issue that was supposedly the reason for which this clerk rejected my filing for the second time, I'm putting that as a central issue in this application in the questions, right? In the most important, prominent part of the application. And I mailed it before receiving the reason for rejection in the letter from the clerk. And this is demonstrable because those packages are traceable, right? Like my FedEx package, and I already printed the tracking of both packages and added them to the Google Cloud Storage bucket for the FBI if they ever investigate this. But you can see, right? You can see the timestamps. You can see that I tendered the package to FedEx at 9:14 a.m. And I only received the USPS package from the clerk at 3:46 p.m. So 8 hours after, right? 8 hours later. So only 8 hours after I mailed the package is that I received the letter from the clerk telling me the reason for rejection. So how could I have had the foreknowledge of the reason to the extent and detail that would allow me to develop these elaborate response, right? Even before getting the letter, right? The only explanation is that the informant in Venezuela, this army intelligence guy that has been passing me information for his own reasons, right? But that he's accurate, right? That's what it means. And not only that, it means that somehow, I don't know the mechanism. He doesn't tell me. I don't even know his real name. But, somehow he has a way of getting these, very detailed information from the Supreme Court of the U.S. How is that possible, right? I think, again, I'm not accusing anybody I'm not accusing the clerk, right? But at the very least, this implies that Diosdado Cabello has a spy inside of the Supreme Court. Like, there's no other way this informant could have known this, right? But beyond that, right? I think it's also important to note that I think that this also validates what I'm saying, right? Because remember, in the narrative, right, that they are presenting since they took the child is that I am crazy, right? And and I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but the taking of the child happened after I had a private conversation with my former partner at home about the fact that the previous night I had discovered the existence of Robert Mueller in Lake Pond Estates. Like, I didn't even know who Robert Mueller was all this time. But on March 27, I discovered it. And I discovered the secret gate that he has on the back of his property. And I discovered the secret power lines that eventually I figured out that they were for PLC, for power line communication. All these discoveries I made on March 27, 2025. And I talked to my former partner about it, and I told her that I was going to report him to the IRS. The next day, the child was taken, within hours, right? I can't recall if I told her that on the 27th or on the 28th. I can't recall, but within hours, right? She tells me, I'm not coming back, and I'm taking the child. And the narrative, so, and this is another detail, right? In that filing that I filed yesterday, that I sent at 9 a.m. to address preemptively the issue that I knew the clerk has used to reject the filing, but before receiving the letter, right? I attached the text messages that I had that day with my former partner discussing this very topic. So in this application, there is proof that I talked to her about Robert Mueller the day the child was taken from Lake Pond Estates, where Robert Mueller has that house, right? So this is now in the Supreme Court, the text messages themselves, talking about Robert Mueller and Lake Pond Estates, which is the homeowners, quote-unquote, association quote-unquote homeowners association that is suing me, with the HOA fee, with the HOA lawsuit and all that, right? The harassment lawsuit of the HOA. It's the same HOA. But anyhow, in those text messages, you can see that she tells me that I can only see the child after I go to a doctor and take medication, basically. So, me seeing my son was conditioned to, accepting that I'm crazy. Like, conceding that. And not only that, accepting medication, right? But, I'm telling you all this not to talk about what happened last year, but to invite you to ask yourself the question, right? If this person is really crazy, how is that he can get information of a filing that is protected by secrecy within the Supreme Court? I mean, the outcome of a filing that is protected by the secrecy of the Supreme Court before even getting the letter from the clerk. How is this possible? I mean, is this person really crazy? You have to ask yourself that question, right? And I think it validates, the things I'm saying about Robert Mueller, right? Because if anybody could get information about what's happening inside of the Supreme Court, would be Robert Mueller, who is the person that I name in those text messages in this very filing, that are the copy of the messages are in this filing. So the same person, if there's somebody who could get that information, would be Robert Mueller, right? Because he was the director of the FBI for multiple years in the US, right? So if anybody is equipped to get that information, it's him. So I think this validates multiple things in one shot. So I don't know. It seems to me like, I'm not really seeking validation here. I know that what I'm saying because I got the database, right? They gave me the database. But what's concerning, right, is that this institution that has to be protected is infiltrated in some way, right? I don't know the mechanism, and here I have to tell you, right, and this is kind of a motto that I have. I only find them, I don't explain them, right? Like, I cannot tell you how they do it. Like, I don't know, right? I don't know how is that they're getting this information from the Supreme Court, but they're getting it. And I think at this point, you should probably consider taking this as proof, right? Like, how could I have known this? There is just no way. So it seems to me like I would call this a national security matter, right? And it's something that deserves investigation from the FBI, I imagine. Right? Like there's no other body capable, I think, or with the jurisdiction to investigate this, right? But I don't know. I have no idea because I know that the Supreme Court has its own, kind of police force inside. So I don't know who would investigate these things, but obviously it seems to me like somebody should investigate this, right? Like, how was this information leaked? So that's the. Oh, I think I have a problem. One second. Oh, I see. Yeah, so the guy yeah, I'll have to fix this. Okay. So let's keep going. Okay, so now I'm going to transition more to other, like a smaller topic. I mean, compared to this is, nothing, right? Yeah, one thing that I, talking about the distributed analyst model that they use, one thing that I forgot to mention yesterday. I mean, I was going to mention it, but then I had that mishap with the tire. Was that another clear advantage of that model is that they have the leaf behind me, right? When I talk about something critical or serious, then that person breaks away, and then they bring the level 2, right? And then the level 2 gets the the level 2 gets the recording, and then they drive to a nearby house, I imagine, with a satellite antenna in a zone that is well protected, right? I mean, with buffer zones, and they have tight security to make sure that nobody is intercepting anything, right? And then from that location, I imagine, right? So looking at everything that I've learned, I think this is how it works. Uh, this person would transmit with NFC, so via short range directional communication to the house, send the data to the house, then they will bring the truck with the trailer, open trailer with the objects of, the color objects like cones and, landscaping equipment and things like that, to encode the seed for the encryption key for the satellite to see. And at that point, they are ready to transmit, right? And they will transmit this information encrypted with this seed that is only visible from a satellite, with a key, with an encryption key generated with this seed that is only visible from a satellite, directly to Caracas or China or Russia, right? Depending on what's the topic. They will pick the destination depending on the topic. And then you see, but the advantage is that it's a single hop, right? It goes straight from that house directly to Fuerte Tuna, right? In one hop, in one network hop. And this is a strength, right? Because as we've seen in previous demos, all communication systems are more vulnerable when they have more hops, when the communication hops to more points, because every point is a possibility of interception. It's a weakness. So systems like, your cable modem at your home is weak because the packets, the IP packets travel through dozens of routers, and all those are possible interception points. So, the other advantage, to summarize this part, the other advantage of this setup that I have is that the analyst is basically sitting next to the target, while I imagine other more traditional intelligence agencies probably have the analyst in the headquarters, right? So I don't know, like here I'm guessing, like I have no idea how the FBI, for example, does it, but I imagine the analyst could be in, I don't know, in Langley, I think it's called, right? Or I don't know where they have I think it's in Langley, Virginia. To be honest, I'm not sure. But, I imagine the analyst is in the headquarters, right? And then the field agents are collecting data and they transmit it using, the secure channels they have. But there are still hops, and any of those hops could be compromised. But so you see, these people with this system they have, they don't have this problem, because what they do is that they're moving, let's call it a meta-analyst next to the target all the time. And then that meta-analyst carries the data with him directly to the satellite. And then it goes, in one beam to Russia or China or Venezuela. So it's a more secure system in that sense, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at my talking points to see. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about yes, on this topic. Now that we're here, let me tell you, I designed last night what I would call Eliana Technologies anti-spies. And I know it sounds, you have to look at the demos where I talk about Eliana Technologies, right? This is a company in Finland that, that this network uses to attack all the internet companies in the world, to demote them from Google. And what they do is a CTR attack, and I'm not going to describe it again because I've described it multiple times in other demos. But the idea is that they issue fake impressions on Google. So, they issue fake queries, and they never click on your website. They click on the websites of the network. And that way, Google thinks that, the algorithms, and I'm telling you this as a Google search ranking, former Google search ranking engineer. I worked at Google in search ranking for almost, 9 years. So I know how it works, right? So what they do, they issue with automated systems millions of queries that display your website for queries that are important to you, but they never click on your website. They click on their websites instead, and they take your topicality that way. So that's what Lena technology does. So it's a technique of spamming Google, right? So what I built last night, well, I designed it and I'm building it, but I haven't finished building it. But it's something similar. But the idea is simple. Now that I know that they have this tier system, right? To, the leaves, these people following me closely to discern the topic and the severity, and then bring in the important agent to really listen in. So my system now, what it does, it compiles a list of explosive things that I've said over the last 110 demos, for example, right? On different topics. And then it creates an audio that is kind of an audio, imagine an audio mix of sentences that I've said, right? That are high severity, like things that could be, damning to the network. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have this thing playing on my car all the time. All these sentences with, grave accusations against the things that, about the things that they do. So this way, this destroys what they do because it's noise, right? This is the equivalent of the fake queries that the other technology does, right? What I will be doing now is adding noise. So I will have this thing playing all the time, and somewhere during my trip, I'm going to really talk, right? During a short period of time. This way, they don't really know what is important and what is not, right? They have no visibility because everything seems important to this person that is not really trained, So this person that can only hear sentences and categorize them, right? Sorry, I have a little bit of a trouble here. I have to stop. 1 second. Yeah, 1 second, okay? Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had a piece of equipment that became loose on the roof, so I had to remove it. Yes. So talking about this, right? Let me see. Yeah, no, serious. So yeah. So what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to have this recording playing with sentences that, if you hear them, an analyst, one of these meta-analysts, right? They would think it's important, and they would be tempted to break away and bring the leaf. But it's just a recording, right? And I have enough audio. I have audio for like 8 months, right? So they will have no way to know real time on the ground if this is old or if this is new. It would require an immense amount of intelligence to determine this, right? So I don't know. I think this would probably create chaos in their system. Right? I mean, they're not going to be able to distinguish what is real and what is not. Right? So this is Eliana Technologies anti-spies that I'm going to implement soon. Finish implementing. And this is an example of why it's important to understand how they do it, right? Because once you understand how you do it, you also can, figure out how to disable it, right? How to turn it ineffective, how to make it inefficient, right? Because the weapon really is the efficiency of the system. But if you attack the efficiency, the system doesn't work very well. And I've done this this is in fact the same thing that I did when I, built the cold vaccine to inoculate my websites against Liana Technology in 2021, right? That's when I bought the C7000 and all that. Yes. So now I'm going to transition a little bit more to Box, okay? No, not Box. I'm going to talk about Lake Point Estates. So in terms of Lake Point Estates, there's a few observations, right? One is that something seems to have happened to Gary Gray. Like, I don't know, maybe he was put on ice or he was put on vacation. I don't know, right? But Gary Gray was one of the consistent agents, right? Like every time I turn on that internet, he would come out of the garage and, do his thing, like trying to get the signature, right? To intercept the downlink. But over the last, I would say, 36 hours, I think he has come out of that garage. The car, right? I don't know if that's him. I cannot see his face. But the car that comes out of that garage has only came out once, right? In the last 36 hours, I think. But before, right, as I was working, he would do this thing, right, with the car, maybe to give an idea, right, of the difference in frequency. I would say I would put it around 20 to 30 times per day. Right? So he would come out or into the garage at the exact same time while I was transmitting a legal document about 20 or 30 times per day. But in the last 36 hours, that reduced to only one time. So I don't know. Something is probably happening or I don't know. I don't know the reason, but it seems. And like before, it was very consistent, like for over a year, right? Like so, It's very strange, right? The change in behavior. Uh, yes. The second thing is that I started doing some analysis on the footage, and this is an experimental idea, right? But it could be something, right? It could turn into a technology. So it's a nugget of an idea right now. But the idea is the following, right? Because I have all this footage of all these cars in trying to intercept the downlink. What I did is that I converted all that footage into stills, into frames, okay? And I counted the number of times, and I then divided the visual field of the camera in, imagine a grid, a small grid, okay, of squares. And then basically I counted using software, right? This is done by a program, counting how many times a square in this footage where there's a vehicle moving through the hot zone at the exact same, and all these at the exact same time that I'm connected to the internet. So I'm discarding all the footage where I'm not connected to the internet, okay? So if you take the footage only of the times where the connection is active, which is a very small amount of time per day, if you zoom the minutes, it would be like 30 minutes per day. Maybe an hour per day, I don't know. It's not connected always. Like it disconnects if there is a car in front of the house or in the road. So if you take those stills, you split them in squares, and you count the number of times a moving vehicle is on each square at the same time that my internet connection is active, surprisingly, the square that wins is the square where Joel Gray installed that for sale sign for his house. So he put a for sale sign for his house like 3 months ago, right? And at the time, I thought that he was, probably setting up an exit, escaping, right? Or I don't know. But seeing this thing that I was using this algorithm that I'm describing, I just saw this morning. It seems to me like obviously the best spot for the interception is where the sign is, because that's where the cars are spending the most time. If you just go by the number of stills that have a moving car present, right? So the hypothesis is that maybe in that sign there is something embedded, like a sensor. Like I don't think they can intercept the signature with that because they need a moving object, but they can at least detect radio frequency. It could be like a trigger, right? That sign could possibly be like a radio frequency trigger. And I'm telling you this based on the disproportionate concentration of moving vehicles in this particular square of all the stills at the time that my internet connection is active, right? So this is not random, right? That is the hotspot. Where that sign is, right? That's where all of them, including the dog walkers, spend the most time, is in that exact spot, okay? Yes, topic detection. And this is interesting, right? So in one of the demos before, I mentioned, I don't know, this was like a month ago, I mentioned that the informant told me, so for example, this guy behind me is a level 2, because as soon as I started talking about Lake Point Estates and Gary Gray, all the cars went away, left me alone, and this gray guy, this gray sedan behind me came, right? And he's maintaining fixed speed. So this is a level 2, right? The guy behind me. So what we're going to do here is the following. We're going to let him pass and we're going to get the plate, okay? Because this is for sure a level 2. Okay. Go ahead, buddy. So it's Whiskey Lima Frank. Sorry, Whiskey January Frank, 9515. Now, this is interesting, and I've noticed this before. It seems to me like over the last 2 days, they stopped using the zero vehicles as interceptors, right? They changed the pattern. There are still the whiskey vehicles, but now they don't have a zero. So that guy, that Whiskey January Frank that I just read, it's a Honda Accord Silver. That's a level 2, right? I would think. Okay. Yeah, so topic detection. And this is interesting, right? So the informant told me like a month ago that they had the ability to detect if I was working on a legal document. And then after that, knowing that, I hypothesized like 2 weeks ago that maybe it's that, a section sign. Maybe they use it as an anchor, right? And yes, I run experiments and this seems to be the case. But I also been running experiments today with other things. And surprise, surprise, it seems like an anchor they're using is DOJ. So if I do any internet activity that contains the letters DOJ together, and DOJ is the acronym for Department of Justice, then they send a couple these are specific vehicles they send. If I type something that has DOJ in it, it's a pool guy, so it's supposedly one of the pool guys, right? Like it's a truck, it's a pickup truck, the smaller, the compact ones, white, carrying an attachment on the back that looks like a pool robot to clean pools. So they dispatch that guy. If I say something that contains, I mean, if I write or do any internet activity that contains in the response or in the request the word DOJ, they send that guy, and there's another one. I don't have those notes with me, but there's another one that is also very consistent. But if the word DOJ is present in the communication, they today necessarily dispatch a car without exception, 100% of the times. But if the connectivity or the connection, the transmission or reception doesn't contain DOJ, they may or may not dispatch a car, right? So from this I can learn two things. One, that they're in a state of sort of alert, right? They are avoiding, they're reducing the activity in a way, right? And you can see this because of the observation of Gary Gray. So Gary Gray is on vacation in a way, right? And now today I can connect to the internet, and they may not even dispatch a vehicle, except if the whatever I'm doing has the word DOJ. In that case, they dispatch the vehicle 100% of the times. And this is interesting because it means that they're not really, I mean, yes, they're targeting me, but they're also targeting the DOJ. This is what this means, right? They are targeting the Department of Justice because they're targeting their acronym. So because they want to impede my communication with them, or they want to interfere in some way. They want to see how they can interfere, right? So that's why. So, but I think the argument could be made, legally speaking. I'm talking about, legal argument. It could be made that they're really targeting is the DOJ, not me, right? Easily, because this is demonstrable. All you have to do is look at the logs of my connections and see that whenever I mention the word DOJ in a Google query and whatever, they send those two guys, right? And others, right? But 100% of the time, they never miss, right? Yes. Mm. Okay. Yes. So they're now in the business of targeting the DOJ. So people cannot report them to the DOJ because they get in the way, right? Uh, yes. Yes. The other thing I want to tell you is about. I missed the exit here, so I don't know. I don't know where I'm going really. The other thing I want to tell you is the following, right? Sorry, one second. Yeah, so yesterday when I was going out, I told you, well, there was something funny that happened like a year and a half ago with this house. And I told you later, but at the end, because I had the mishap with the tire, I couldn't, right? But this one is funny, so I'm gonna tell you. So what happened was when I moved to Lake Point Estates, this was on June, at the end of June 2024. Yes. When I moved to Lake Point Estates, right? I made all the efforts. I mean, this was me being naive, right? I thought I could escape the surveillance, right? And I made all the possible efforts to try to hide where I was moving to because I didn't know that they owned Katy. I didn't have the geo index at that point. So, I did all like I registered a company, and then the company bought the house, and I obscured the communications in all ways I could. I didn't apply for a loan. I did all I could to obscure the fact that I was buying this specific house. So when I moved there, right, the first night that I'm there, I'm going out in the car, in the vehicle, and yeah, they're blocking me here at the intersection. You see what they do, right? So they put all these vehicles in here, and then they move very, very slowly, right? Like they take all, like every car takes like 5 seconds to move, to start moving, and that way, if you add them up, right? If you add 5 seconds, you multiply it by 20 cars, it's 100 seconds, right? It's a minute and a half. So it will take me probably 2 light changes to get through, right? So I have to do this thing. I have to, get into a gas station and get on the back and things like that. I have to, because otherwise they will block me in that intersection for two traffic changes, right? For 2 light changes. And they're doing this so they can rearrange the cars and put them ahead of me, right? That's the goal. Okay. So that night, the first night, right? I'm going out, and that guy from that house. I will tell you the address of that house when I finish telling you this. Right? When I get to, I'm going to Micro Center, by the way. When I get there, I'll tell you the address, right? But that's the house that had the garage open last night. And I say, oh, this is funny. And I said it's funny because over the last year and a half, that garage has never been open. The only time that it was open was that day, the first night that I was at Lake Point Estates, or the day I moved to Lake Point Estates. And the rules was the following, right? So as I was going out, they opened the garage. I mean, that guy, it's a man. It's a, I don't know. I saw him that day. He's a younger, I mean, he's probably mid-30s, right? He's younger than me. So he opened the garage, and he had, I remember, a Camaro, I think it was a black Camaro. And next to so the garage was completely empty, right? And next to the car, he had a mattress. And like he had moving boxes and stuff next to the mattress, right? So I guess, I mean, the way I interpreted it, and I think this was the intention of that sequence, was that he was just moving to Lake Point Estates, right? I think it was a move to make me believe that they were following me to Lake Point Estates, which of course is not true. Lake Point Estate is a hub of espionage since 25 years ago, since it was built. And I've talked about why I believe this multiple times in multiple demos, right? So it is not true that they were following me, right? But they did all these things, and the same thing with this. When you enter the subdivision, the first house on the left, they did the same thing with that house. They put a for sale sign, and then they brought, as I was entering the subdivision, there was a Chinese woman supposedly looking at the house, right? And then like a week after, she was moving in, and I saw her moving in, right? So this was to make me believe that the Chinese were acquiring houses in the subdivision, but this is not true. They own the houses, right? And they've owned the houses for 25 years. But this was just to throw me off track, right? To then change the identities of the agents, and that, I would think that these were like new Chinese agents that were just coming in, right? And I couldn't see the Robert Muellers, the Gary Grays, the Phil Dennings, etc., right? But it was naive of me to fall for that, like to believe that they were just following me, right? And at the same time, I think it's also a psychological technique, right? Like, because think of the message that sends to a person that is being harassed by a network like this, right? What they were basically telling me is, no matter where you move, no matter if you buy a house that is, whatever it costs, we will follow you, right? That was the meta message they were sending me, right? We will buy all the houses next to you, wherever you go, right? But it's not true. Like they own the town. I mean, yes, it's true. Probably wherever I move, they will buy the houses, right? But given everything that has happened after, but what wasn't true is that they were buying those houses. They own those houses for decades, and these people are agents and have been agents for decades. That wasn't a new situation they were creating. That's what I'm trying to say. But they were portraying it to me as this was something new, right? Something new that they were setting up at Lake Point Estates. So that guy, right? He opened the garage and and presented this to me in a way that it looked like he didn't even have a mattress or a bed to sleep on, right? Like that he was just camping there, right? But it's not true. Like, he's probably been established there for years. So let me tell you about that house, right? So that house, I'm going to tell you the address of that house. Oh, this is funny. Lake Point Estates has its own street now. 100 Lake Point Estates Drive. Mind that. Okay. So that house is this one on Mist Lake. Hmm. Let me open let me open this in Google Maps because the navigation of this doesn't give me the numbers. Yeah, so this is, so I mean, the house I'm describing, right, of this agent that did this is the 24919 Mist Lake Court, Katy, Texas 77494. So that's the guy with the black Camaro that opened the garage and had the boxes and the mattress next to the car to make me believe that he was just moving it. This was around June 30, 2024. Uh, on the subject of Lake Point Estates, I also want to tell you that I served them all. I mean, uh, all of the directors that I'm suing in federal court and the corporation, and I serve all the other parties in that lawsuit with this amended emergency application that has all this information and includes now, and in this one I made Lake Point Estates a prominent part of the narrative. Like they appear, I mean, the subdivision itself is mentioned in the first paragraph of the emergency application. And it mentions in the narrative Robert Mueller and what I told my former partner about reporting him to the IRS, and that I believe that was the trigger for taking the child. So all of this is mentioned in that application, which I sent to all of them because I'm serving them, right, legally speaking. So let's see what they do with that. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna go in and I'll come back in a few minutes. Bye.